All right, today we're diving into a pretty provocative analysis, one that argues Spain's economy isn't just in a slump. No, it's at a really dangerous turning point. The core thesis? That its entire economic model has basically reached a dead end. So let's break down exactly why.
Yeah, the source material really doesn't pull any punches, does it? It kicks things off with this incredibly stark declaration. And the author's point isn't just that Spain is facing, a typical recession. The argument is that this is something much bigger, a definitive structural collision with reality. The idea is that the entire economic model has just run its course.
And that really brings us to the first major point here. The analysis looks at President Sanchez's recent trip to China and says, hold on, this isn't just routine diplomacy. It's framed as a pretty desperate search for a lifeline. You see, it's seen as a symptom of a much, much deeper problem, the complete seizure of Spain's traditional engines of wealth. Okay, so the crucial concept to wrap your head around here is structural obsolescence. I mean, what does that even mean? Well, the analysis argues that Spain's economic model, which has for so long relied on what it calls easy wealth, is now completely and totally exhausted. It's just not prepared for a new global landscape, one that demands actual merit and real productivity, not just easy access to someone else's money. So, you might be asking, how did things get to this point? Well, to understand that, the analysis takes us on a little trip back through history. The core argument is that for centuries, Spanish prosperity hasn't really come from internal innovation. Instead, it's been fueled by a series of external windfalls. Basically, three major cycles of dependency that have really shaped the nation's entire economic culture. And the source identifies three historical pillars that built this dependency. They call them el oro, el moro, and el euro. Think of each one as an era where Spain's economy was propped up by wealth it either extracted or received, not wealth it actually created itself. So yeah, let's break these down. First step, el oro, the gold. This one's pretty straightforward, right? We're talking about the centuries of extracting riches from the Americas. It was a massive, massive influx of capital that, crucially, didn't require building a complex, homegrown industrial base. Okay, the second one is El Moro, the harvest. And this is a really interesting argument. The source claims that after the expulsion of the Jews and Moors, Spain basically inherited and then lived off the super sophisticated agricultural and commercial systems they left behind. So again, it's this idea of reaping a harvest that, according to the author, it didn't actually sow itself. And that brings us right up to the modern era with El Euro, the subsidy. This is all about the dependence on European Union funds, and of course the easy credit flowing from the European Central Bank. The source has a pretty potent name for these: monetary narcotics. The idea is that they've masked deep domestic stagnation and let the country put off necessary and probably painful reforms for way too long. So, if that EU subsidy model is winding down, what's next? Well, this is where it gets really dicey. The analysis claims there's this dangerous hope bubbling up, the idea that China could become a fourth handout, a brand new source of easy money. The author has a name for this belief: a strategic hallucination. And this really illustrates the massive disconnect, right? On one side, you have Spain allegedly looking for a new benefactor to just keep the old model going, but on the other side, you have the reality of China. The analysis says China operates on a completely different wavelength. It's a strategic power built on humility, labor, long-term vision, and merit. And it demands tangible value in return for partnership. And this quote just hits the nail on the head. China is not a lender of last resort for failing states. It is a rigorous power that demands tangible productivity. Wow. The idea that China is just going to write checks to prop up a stagnant economy is, according to this source, a complete and fundamental misreading of its entire economic and geopolitical philosophy. So if China isn't the easy answer Spain might be hoping for, then what is? Well, the analysis argues Spain has to do the exact opposite. Don't go to China for a handout, it says. Instead, you need to radically learn from its structural discipline. That's the only way, according to the author, to avert a total national collapse. So the author lays out what they see as a mandatory three-front attack on this stagnation. It's basically a prescription for a complete national restructuring. Step 1, eliminate the bureaucracy. Step 2, fight corruption. And step 3, end the subsidy hypnosis. Let's start with that first one, the bureaucracy. And yes, that's a clever play on the Spanish word for donkey, MORO. It's defined as this massive administrative bloat that literally suffocates the private sector and drives away badly needed foreign investment. And the source puts this in stark contrast to China's approach, which has been to systematically demolish its own bureaucratic barriers to unleash growth. Okay, second on the list, fighting corruption. The analysis calls for what it terms ferocious control, basically iron-fisted control to make absolutely sure that capital is directed toward real industrial advancement, not siphoned off into political patronage. It's all about protecting investment and making sure it actually serves the national interest, not just a few insiders.
And the third step is ending the subsidy hypnosis. I mean, what a powerful metaphor, right? The author argues that this constant IV drip of easy money from the ECB has put the country into a kind of trance, where millions are maintained in non-productive states. And the argument is that this whole destructive cycle absolutely has to be broken.
So all of this leads to a very, very stark conclusion. According to this analysis, the time for easy fixes is over. The time for finding just one more harvest to reap, that's definitively over. Spain is now faced with a final choice, and there are only two paths forward. The message really could not be clearer. The era of the handout is over. That historical cycle of el oro, el moro, and el euro, the analysis says that chapter is permanently closed. The subsidies are drying up, and there are no new easy windfalls on the horizon, period. And this really gets to the heart of the new global reality. China gives nothing for nothing. Any engagement with a major power now requires reciprocity. It demands you bring real, tangible value to the table. The author argues that the illusion of getting something for nothing is probably the single most dangerous one a country can have right now. So what's the ultimate prescription here? It's a radical pivot. A massive shift away from a system the author literally describes as the looting of private initiative and toward a new model. A model of seriousness, efficiency, and productivity. One that values these things above all else. Even, and this is key, above short-term political survival. And all of this leaves us with a final, really challenging question. The source presents this brutal choice: radical transformation or national collapse. There's no middle ground. And it makes you wonder, right? Thinking beyond just Spain. What does it truly take for any nation, once it's comfortable in its ways, to find the will to completely change course before it too hits the wall?